Hello and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. If you haven't already, like and subscribe to get new episodes delivered to your inbox each week. I'm your host, Carrie Gitter, Associate Editor at SME Media, and our topic today is From Fragmented to Connected, what a digitally connected factory looks like. Most manufacturers have great people, strong processes, but way too many disconnected systems where data lives in silos, teams spend time chasing information, and instead of making decisions in quality, compliance and delivery suffers. In this episode, we're talking about what it really means to run a digitally connected manufacturing operation, not in theory but in practice. What does it look like when your ERP, quality system, and shop floor tools actually talk to each other? How do your people work differently when they can trust the data, move faster, and stay audit ready? We'll dig into the real-world impact of connecting your factory, from fewer manual headaches to better visibility and smarter decision-making across the board. I'm pleased to be joined today by Padma Raghunathan, Product Marketing Manager at Deltek. So welcome, Padma. Great to have you.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really excited to be here today.
And can you tell us a little bit about your role at Deltek and your take on this topic?
Absolutely. And just a little bit about myself, for the benefit of your audience. I'm actually an engineer by training. I have a master's in electrical engineering, and I've spent about 15 years in the aerospace and defense business. And over the course of my career, I've worn several hats: sales, business development, customer relations, and I've had the opportunity to work with teams managing really complex contracts and programs all over the world. And through that journey, I've discovered that what I really love is helping customers and partners find ways to deliver value and solve big challenges. Fast forward to today, I lead product marketing at for Deltek's manufacturing and quality solutions. And for anyone in this audience who might not be familiar with Deltek, we are the leading ERP provider for project-based businesses, especially government contractors. And what that really means is if you think about all the moving pieces in your manufacturing business, project accounting, supply chain, manufacturing, shop floor operations, quality, we bring those together in one integrated platform. And Deltek has been around for more than 40 years. We've been doing this for a while now, and we're really proud to support tens of thousands of organizations of all sizes across the globe. And that's why I'm really excited for our conversation today, Carrie. A lot of manufacturers are thinking about digital transformation, like how to connect their systems, improve quality, and keep up with changing requirements. So it's a huge challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity in this day and age. And I'm really looking forward to diving into that with you.
Great. Thank you. Great to have you here to discuss this with us. So why don't we start with kind of the problem, what's broken today, and the messy stuff. Like, what does fragmentation look like on the shop floor? What kind of problems do manufacturers run into when their systems aren't talking to each other effectively?
Right. So as you said, fragmentation is really messy. And what happens is it shows up in many ways, some obvious, some subtle, but certainly damaging ways, right? So you'll often see several, shop floor operators writing down things on paper or filling out paper-based forms. Why? Because their quality system or their shop floor systems may not be connected to their ERP systems. Or sometimes you'll see supervisors, right? They're pulling data from 3 different spreadsheets, right? Or 3 different sources, like maybe a spreadsheet, maybe emails, just to get a picture of what happened on, say, yesterday's evening shift, right? So each system might do its job well, but when they're isolated, right, you're left with gaps, duplicate work, and a lot of manual reentry. And on the shop floor, that translates to delays, errors, and a constant feeling of chasing information instead of acting on it. So when you ask the question, like, what kind of problems do manufacturers face when systems are not talking to each other, the biggest problem is when you talk about disconnected system are around accuracy and speed. So say if your ERP says one thing, your QMS says another, and your time tracking solution, say, isn't aligned with either of those systems, then you have teams wasting hours reconciling instead of actually producing quality work. And quality issues sometimes take a long time to resolve because root causes are sometimes buried in disconnected records, right? Not just that, if you're talking about manufacturing, right? Compliance is a huge part of that. And compliance becomes harder because auditors don't accept three different answers for the same question. Ultimately, what happens is businesses lose agility, and in highly regulated industries like manufacturing, that could mean missed deadlines, higher costs, or even failed audits.
So the solution to that then that's being proposed is a digitally connected factory, and that's a term that we hear more and more often these days. But when you say digitally connected factory, what does that really mean? Is it just like tech jargon, or is there something tangible there? Um, and what does it actually look like when everything ERP, QMS, labor tracking is all working in sync?
Well, it's not jargon for sure. It's absolutely real and it has an immense impact on business. So, to put it very simply, right, a digitally connected factory simply means that your core systems, right, whether the ones that handle your projects, your finances, labor, supply chain, quality, production, inventory, right, they are no longer operating in silos. Instead, they're talking to each other and sharing information in real time. Think of it this way, right? Instead of your shop floor tracking, labor in one system or quality checks in another, and then finance trying to make sense of all of this separately, you have one reliable source of truth. That means everyone from the operator on the line to the program manager to the CFO, they're all looking at the same data at any given point of time. So it's really about moving away from disconnected tools and spreadsheets to an integrated ecosystem where data flows seamlessly, decisions are being made a lot faster, that are data driven, that are data backed, and where people can act with confidence. So let me illustrate this with an example. So let's say, for instance, a quality issue is flagged on the shop floor, like maybe say a component doesn't meet, the required specs. In many facilities, many manufacturing businesses or factories, that would kick off a scramble, right? Someone would fill out a paper form, or someone would send an email to the stakeholder saying, hey, we're facing this problem, right? And then maybe another person tries to track down which work order that ties to, and someone else is digging into labor records to see who actually worked on it. And then at the end of it all, finance is left waiting for the impact on cost and schedule. It's messy, it's really slow, and it often results in duplicate effort and delays that drive up cost. Now, contrast that with a connected environment, right? So the moment, say, an issue is logged in your quality system saying, hey, this particular product does, or this particular part doesn't conform to the specs or the drawing, right? What happens is it automatically links the issue to the right work order in the ERP. It links it to the specific lot or materials used, and also the labor records of employees who touched it. Right? Now, the manager immediately sees the full scope, right? What product is affected, who's involved, how much rework might be required, and whether delivery dates are going to get affected or not. And from there, corrective actions then flow back through the system, right? Schedules are updated, labor tracking gets adjusted, compliance records now capture the details of all these changes, and leadership then gets real-time visibility into both operational and your financial impact. So now, instead of waiting weeks for finance to tally the cost of scrap or the rework and all these delayed shipments, leaders can now see the implications right away, and they can make faster, smarter decisions to contain that expense. And that's where the real value shows up, right? Less time wasted chasing data, fewer surprises, and cost overruns. You are able to start delivering better and on time. And you're also ensuring that, you have a tighter handle on margins. So you're not just solving a quality issue, you're also potentially protecting your profitability. So a lot of things get impacted, but ultimately, what do leaders care about? The bottom line. And having that connected system can really help you put the right checks and balances in place to ensure that you're protecting your bottom line.
Great. And on a similar note, when you have that reduction in manual work and in chasing data and in that kind of like wild goose chase scenario you described, does that also just give teams an opportunity to be doing more meaningful work? Just in terms of the day to day, they're shifting from those cumbersome manual tasks into more strategic, meaningful operations.
Yeah. So when systems are connected, right? As I said, you spend time doing more meaningful work, right? And what I like to say is, like you're making the time to hunt and gather, right? Quote unquote, hunt and gather disappear, right? You want to get rid of that. So think about, how, operators on the shop floor, like without integration or without having that connected system in place, they might have to clock in their time in one system, for instance. They might have to record quality checks in another system, and then they have to go chase down inventory data somewhere else. So that's three different logins, three different inputs, and a whole lot of wasted motion, right? In a connected setup, they do it once, and all the data automatically flows everywhere it needs to go, right? So that's, again, cutting down on that manual work significantly. And that's for people on the shop floor. Now, think about managers and leaders, right? That impact is just as powerful. Like instead of waiting hours or sometimes even days, right, for someone to pull spreadsheets together, now what happens is they can see dashboards that update in real time. So if a process starts trending off target, they know right away and they can address it before it becomes a much larger issue. And that's the real value, right? So when people aren't bogged down with manual data entry or report chasing, right? They get to spend their energy where it really matters, which is solving problems, driving improvements, and also just focusing on production and quality, like their day-to-day tasks, which are super critical, right? And that makes a huge difference, not just in efficiency, but also in employee satisfaction.
Great. And do you have a concrete example, to help paint a picture of a particular customer who might have gone from that kind of patchwork of systems to something more streamlined, and how it benefited the organization?
Yes. So Deltek has a customer that really illustrates this. So they are a major government contractor and they have tens of thousands of employees and they have a massive portfolio of contracts. Now, their challenge was pretty typical at that scale, right? Production deadlines, cost controls, supplier performance, and disconnected systems that was creating real bottlenecks. Now, what they did was they implemented CostPoint and TIP technology. So CostPoint is our flagship ERP for our government contractors, and TIP Technologies is our quality solution. So when they deployed these two solutions, right, they were able to unify accounting, manufacturing, and quality into one platform. And the results were very, very powerful, right? All that manual work that they were, facing, they were able to drastically cut that. And because of which they were able to drastically cut down the costs as well. Then critical data, right, which was, again, when information is sitting in siloed systems, some teams may get access to it, some may not. So they were able to cut down all of that, and they were able to centralize all that data and make it accessible to all the primary stakeholders. And they also gained the agility, to respond faster to customer and audit needs. Because again, being a huge government contractor, obviously, requirements changes, audit needs change. So they needed to have systems in place that could help them, be a lot more responsive and not let systems bog them down. And their VP of Enterprise Applications actually put it very well that with Deltek solutions, right, they were able to connect finance, project management, and compliance teams on a standardized platform, right? So they were able to improve auditability, and also they were able to speed up response times. And that kind of integration typically it's not just about streamlining operations. It has a real financial impact, whether it's cost savings, reduced risk of penalties, and most importantly, which is absolutely priceless, is stronger customer trust.
And when you see that kind of connection among teams, what impact does it have on decision making and the ability of companies to pivot and respond and make those decisions kind of in a more integrated, united way?
Yeah. So what happens is when you connect systems, right, that experience really changes for everyone. So for people on the shop floor, right, it takes away a lot of that daily frustration. Instead of stopping multiple times to enter the same information in different places, they log their work once and move on. because they're confident that it's being captured everywhere it needs to be. That means they can stay focused on the job at hand instead of wrestling with systems. For quality teams, the difference is like night and day, right? They're no longer playing detective, piecing together records from different sources after the fact. Instead, they can now see issues, patterns, or even trends unfolding in real time. And that lets them respond faster, prevent problems before they escalate into something, something really big, and spend more time driving improvements instead of chasing down just root causes. And for management, that means decisions are grounded in complete, accurate, up to the moment data rather than partial snapshots or outdated report. So leaders gain a clear line of sight into operations, which makes it easier to prioritize resources, balance those delicate trade-offs, and also plan strategically. So decision making, goes from reactive to proactive. And again, that the result is that everyone at the end of the day, whether they're on the shop floor, whether it's quality, whether it's leadership, everyone is a lot more aligned and a lot more confident because again, they're all working from that single source of truth.
Great. And while we're on the topic of people, let's talk a little bit about company culture, because any technological solution can only go so far as a culture allows it to really be effective. So in Deltek's experience, what kind of mindset shift do teams need to make this digital connectivity work? And for people who've been doing things a certain way for a number of years and are used to kind of the old school approach, how do you get buy-in from those team members so that everybody's on the same page?
Yeah, I love that question because whenever we talk about digital transformation, the modern era of technology and all of that, right? It's usually driven by three factors, right? People, process, and technology. And, that people part is so important, right? And when you talk about the mindset shift, right? It's when we talk about this whole digital transformation, right? The biggest shift is actually moving from a silo mentality to a shared one. So instead of thinking, this is my system, so this is my data, so I must protect it and I own this, right? The mindset shift is all about how teams start to see the value of collective visibility, right? It's about trusting that when information is shared, everyone benefits. And I have seen this myself personally. Long time ago, I worked for a company where, teams were very territorial about their processes and their data. And that was impacting how the business as a whole was delivering to the customer, right? And no one was seeing that, that huge deficit, right? But when you really talk about that culture and the cultural shift, it's about, how technology can be really effective, for the entire organization. Otherwise, you're just going to be replacing old silos with new digital ones. And again, to your point about, the buy-in from folks, right? It's like, look, as the cliche goes, change always meets with resistance. But success also comes from involving people early. So, for instance, when you show your shop floor personnel, whether it's supervisors, whether it's an operator, how connected systems like reduce duplicate entry. Or, for instance, you show managers that, hey, if you were to use this cuts down on your reporting time, and you can focus on something that really matters to you. That buy-in grows naturally, right? Because it's not just that one person sitting in the corner office is making all those decisions because, it only matters to him or her. No, it's about everyone in the value chain. So it's very importantly, actually, to emphasize that technology isn't about replacing human expertise, right? It's about augmenting it, it's about amplifying it. So you got to explain that to your key stakeholders. And, people also need to understand and, be educated on the fact that, hey, this is about keeping your skills, enhancing your knowledge. And now you also have these digital tools that remove friction around your day-to-day tasks. So that way we can all be effective, as an organization.
And one thing that's certainly true for manufacturing is that things are always changing. Regulations are shifting, customer demands are evolving, there can be audits. So with that level of constant motion, how can being connected digitally help manufacturers stay ready and agile no matter what's coming next?
Yeah. So when everything is connected, right? one thing, and let me just take a step back, right? So when we talk about manufacturing, right? Yes, we all have our deliverables and so on and so forth, but there are a couple of things, especially if you're in a regulated environment, that are extremely important, which is compliance and readiness, right? That agility that we spoke of. And so when everything is connected, right, compliance and readiness aren't just separate tasks, right? They're part of how you work every day. So because your systems are now linked, your records are complete, they're accurate, they're traceable, right? So say, for instance, when an audit comes up, you're not just scrambling for information, right? It's all right there. Or similarly, say, for instance, if you're bidding on a new contract, right? You can quickly access historical data, right? Whether it's direct or indirect costs, material costs, bills of material, right? To make accurate estimates. When you're looking at how can you be more agile, be more forward thinking as an organization, think about this, right? If you have a connected enterprise, you can track performance metrics, you can manage risks, you can forecast needs a lot more effectively. For instance, if a customer asks for a status update or proof of quality, you can respond quickly and confidently instead of waiting for, a few days, or if something is urgent, you have to ask your customer, like, hey, can you give me a couple of days? That doesn't really look good sometimes, right? But when you have a more connected enterprise, information is literally at your fingertips. Like, even for instance, right, in a competitive world, you want to take your product to the market like as quickly as possible, right? There's so much, going on, from a technological perspective, right? So when you're introducing a new product or technology to the market, having connected tools makes a huge difference, right? It helps you stay agile. You can keep track on, what those potential risks are. And you can also ensure that you meet customer expectations. So that kind of readiness isn't just convenient, right? It's a real competitive advantage, because the guy who takes his product to the market first obviously has a lot more, is obviously, first to market, right? You have a lot more advantage compared to your competitors. So keeping all of this in mind, I think, yeah, having that connected factory, connected systems, it definitely keeps you on top of things and keeps you ready for whatever is coming next.
And especially in industries like aerospace and defense that Deltek focuses on, you mentioned that example of like a defense contractor. How does this kind of setup help with compliance specifically in that sector and keeping those customers confident in their products?
Yeah. So in A&D, as many people in your audience may be aware, is that compliance is non-negotiable, right? So missing requirements can mean lost contracts or penalties sometimes, right? And a connected environment ensures every step, like whether it's labor tracking or if you're tracking inspections, right? All of that is documented against the project. And it also creates transparency, which builds customer trust. So when clients see that you can show them exactly how requirements were met, and that too in an effective manner, then they feel a lot confident in your ability to deliver, not just today, but also in the long run.
Now, with all of this in mind, if there's one thing or a few things that you hope that our listeners take away from this conversation about digitally connected factories and breaking down silos, what would be those top points, those key takeaways that you want to leave people with?
Great question. I'd say that the biggest takeaway is that being digitally connected isn't some big abstract idea that only giant manufacturers can pull off. Like, it's very real and it's achievable, even if you're a small business. So when your ERP, your quality systems, your shop floor tools are connected, the day-to-day work just changes for the better, right? And you spend less time chasing data and more time doing meaningful work. You stay out of audits instead of a last-minute scramble, and you make smarter decisions quickly and better, obviously, because everyone's looking at the same version of the truth. So if you were to remember one thing from this conversation, it's that connectivity isn't just about randomly adding more tech. Nope, it's about making that technology, those tools actually work for you, because every business is unique. Every business has its own requirement. So you can assess and determine what's the best solution for your organization and deploy that accordingly. And that's where the real transformation happens. And again, if you're a manufacturing business and if you're not sure, where to begin, where to start, again, Deltek's here, right? So you can, log on to deltek.com. There's a lot of information around manufacturing. If you're an A&D, if you're in aerospace and defense, there's a lot of content around that. So, and if nothing else, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you.
Wonderful. Well, Padma, thank you so much for joining us today. You've shared a lot of great insights, and it's been very informative for me, and I'm sure for our audience as well. We really appreciate you taking the time. And as you just mentioned, if listeners want to learn more about Deltek, you said they can go to deltek.com and reach out with their particular needs. And to keep up with the latest manufacturing trends and hear more podcasts, as always, you can subscribe to our podcast feed. And of course, visit us anytime at advancedmanufacturing.org. Thank you so much for listening.